everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight we are gonna be reacting to another video. Tonight it's gonna be Polybius, the video game that doesn't exist. I actually have read about, well, watched videos about, I obviously don't read about this kind of thing, because a while ago when I was a lot younger than I am now, what do you mean? It's the same energy that I portray in every one of my other fucking videos. I don't think I've changed as a person. I don't think I've changed. Also, I gotta fucking make sure that you guys can actually hear yourselves too. So let me go on ahead and fix that while I'm at it. You guys are gonna be like, you've changed a lot, man. You're not the same you were 5 years ago. We've read about we've seen Polybius. I know what Polybius is. I've talked about Polybius. Sorry, my fucking mind is going crazy. And I know that it's a game that a lot of people say that used to exist, but really has not existed at all. So it is an interesting thing that we're going to be able to see a video about said thing. So for now, let me go on ahead and get this ready, and I will start the video. What do you mean? I'm gonna make a squirrely thing.
There is a video game that doesn't exist. It's a myth, an urban legend, a hoax. It's called Polybius, and you might have heard of it. Let me take you back to 1981, back when arcade games were at their peak. A multi-billion-dollar industry and a fever that had a grip on pop culture. Video arcades were a new social nexus and had sprung up everywhere. Dimly lit by neon light, adorned with garish carpet, they played host both to crowds of teenagers and cabinet after cabinet of the hottest games of the era. Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Galaga.
Crazy that these type of games were used to be so much bigger back in the day than they are now. When all they were was just 8-bit art on a screen doing a certain thing. I feel like being a game designer back in the day when this was going on might have been a lot more easier, especially with the limitations that you were set with. Because like really, how many how many types of games were already out there? Like there was a lot already. So like I don't know. I feel like it's easier to create new games. I mean, we had Final Fantasy come out. We had fucking Street Fighter come out during Galaga. This was during the time when Pong was the thing too. Exactly. If I was one of the only 5 VTubers in the world, I would be big. I'd be unique.
However, in an unnamed arcade in some sleepy suburb of Portland, there lurked something more obscure. A limited release of a game that would evaporate as silently as it appeared. The stories are vague. The cabinet is described as plain, and the gameplay? Weird looking, abstract, fast action with puzzle elements. Sometimes it's described as being particularly addictive, despite the unassuming appearance. The only concrete details are the name, year of release, and the company behind it. Polybius, 1981, Zinnis Lotion. Really, it was just like any other arcade machine, except for the side effects. Reports of...
Is that even possible to ever play a game? Like, I get with sound, but visuals too. Oh, well, no, because then seizures exist. Fuck. Yeah, nah, I can see it. I could 100% see it. It's like, I'm thinking about sound, how it could induce a headache. And then I'm just like, oh, wait, but visual stimuli could also aggravate the eyes too, causing you to also get headaches and cause some different other people seizures. So, I mean, yeah, I guess it could to a certain point. What was even the point? Well, okay, so like, let's say it was real though. Let's say it was real. What was the point of it? Because if you think about it, it was always they were always looking for something that had to do with mind control, right? That was like what the FBI or the CIA wanted. It was always mind control. It was always truth serums and shit like that. Pretty fucking sure. Interesting enough though.
Thickness Amnesia, night terrors, and behavioral changes followed those who played it. It was no accident either, if you believe the rumors. Instead, a secret project by a government agency, developed from military tech for the CIA or some other men in black. The machines were observed, gameplay records were taken, and then, after a month or so, they disappeared without notice, along with any shred of evidence. To this day, no authentic cabinets, boards, or dumped ROMs have surfaced. But there are some who claim to hold them.
They're not real. The thing is people are always gonna think they can't be real. Like, it could be. There's a chance that it could be, but it's such a small. It's such a small thing, like small chance that it can be real. But it doesn't feel like it could be. Like, yeah, somebody might have like thought about a game coming out of that caliber, talking about how there might have been a game that made you feel a little weird, that might have killed you. But you would think that there would be more outcry about this. You would think that there'd be people suing the arcade places for this kind of thing, you know? Like, this is serious shit.
Quite the yarn. But could there be any merit to this myth, or even a basis in truth? It's probably safe to assume that the story has been subject to quite some embellishment. The accounts are full of conjecture and weasel words, supposedly, according to, etc. One thing remains consistent across all the stories, and that's the name. Polybius. Why Polybius? It's not novel, it belongs to a Greek of some repute, a prominent historian born in Megalopolis, Arcadia. This could be a deliberate choice to muddy search queries about the game, or perhaps it was chosen on its own merits. Polybius covered the Romans' rise to power in detail,
Okay.
an important primary source and an early example of rigor in historiography. He also lends his name to a simple cipher, the Polybius square, in which letters are substituted by their coordinates on a grid. Altogether,
These are
this
the
doesn't tell us
craziest
much,
fucking, like,
although the
ways to
meaning of the
cipher
name
words.
is interesting. The poly prefix means many, and bios, life. Many lives from Arcadia. Convenient.
I don't think it
It
would
could be a
called-
coincidence, but we can assume whoever named the game has at least some knowledge of either history or cryptography. Real or not, the name was chosen.
Like, there is no way that somebody called it Polybius for like some kind of fucking like mysterious thing. Like, it had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with code. It had nothing to do with like secret codes or anything like that. Then why call it Polybius then? I feel like something like that would be called something completely different. And then even then, it's just like, why? Like, I keep coming back to the fact, like, wouldn't there have been more outcry for the game that fucking killed people?
Another word consistent to the myth is the supposed developer or publisher, Lotion. It's a German word, almost. A not quite
Almost.
grammatical combination of Sinne, meaning sense, and Lotion, meaning to erase.
Lotion, meaning to moisturize.
To erase senses, to become senseless. It seems to allude to the mythical side effects of Polybius, which implies a deliberate choice. It's almost certainly not a real company, as there are no other games attributed to them, nor any trace of company records. So Polybius could...
Like, you see what I mean? Like, this has got to be fucking crazy. You go about making your company, right? And you're just like, haha, what if I wanted to do this and be like a fucking, like some kind of dude who's just like, I want this to be in front of people, but not in front of people to suspect that it actually makes sense. So they make a fucking word that literally means to lose your senses, which is exactly what the game was told. You were told that the game does. How fucking crazy is that? What?
Could be of German origin, but the incorrect grammar might also indicate the use of machine translation, something chosen by a non-native speaker to sound suitably obscure or sinister. There isn't much visual evidence for the game, and most can be discounted as fake. But there is one screenshot that is consistently upheld as canon. It's rather basic. A black background with a POLYBIUS logo, copyright information and credits.
That does make sense though.
And nothing else. However, compared to contemporary games from 1981, one thing stands out. The logo is unusually large and detailed. Back then, fancy graphics were confined to the printed marquees. Every kilobyte of the ROM was valuable, so most game titles were rendered in the standard font, or at a much smaller scale. This did change over the next few years, and by 1983, larger, more lavishly designed title screens were more common.
You know, I wasn't thinking about that either, actually.
The closest match in terms of style might be from Nintendo. Their games favor large, bold titles with similar lettering. Perhaps POLYBIUS drew inspiration from Versus Pinball or Duck Hunt. Of course, both of these date to 1984, which makes POLYBIUS's 1981 claimed year of release look spurious.
But that's the thing, I don't see
Perhaps
anything.
it was just ahead of its time.
I don't see anything special about like the thing, and then he's talking about it. I'm like, I guess I could figure out what he means by it, but at the same time, it's just like you look at this, and there's nothing special about it. I don't see it.
Another detail from this screenshot is the font used for the smaller text. Those with a keen eye might recognize a similarity to those used by Williams games, such as Defender or Robotron. And it's definitely a close match, but they're not identical. The smallest 5-pixel high text does match Robotron,
Oh, okay.
but the larger 7-pixel text does not. There is one game that comes closer. Nearly a perfect match. And while still a Williams title, it's the much less well-known Bubbles.
Bubbles!
It's still not a pixel-perfect fit, but it is closer than any other. The minor differences could be attributed to font hinting, JPEG artifaction, or perhaps a deliberate alteration. In any case,
You see, these are details I didn't even was thinking about, dude. This is details that I wasn't even thinking about. I didn't know that the pixel perfect parts of it were. I didn't know there was fonts for 8-bit. I didn't know there was fonts for 8-bit shit. I didn't know there was fonts for 16-bit shit. I didn't know that there was a certain amount of details that were there for certain time periods. That kind of should just give you a reason to just be like, well, this can't be real then. Because during that time, this specific thing wasn't possible.
the text is distinctly Williams. Either POLYBIUS is some lost prototype, or the image was fabricated by someone who drew influence from their games. The screenshot has been around for almost as long as the myth, and is likely the original source for the turquoise bubble-lettered logo. It doesn't exactly give us much to go on, and it certainly doesn't reveal what the gameplay might have been like. There are some that claim to reveal more of POLYBIUS, such as these vector-esque images distributed on the now-defunct POLYBIUSlives.com.
Those are hella.
First emerging around April in 2008, there's little supporting evidence for their veracity. All signs point to a fan-made creation. Besides, it doesn't make sense. If you had the ROMs and were able to take screenshots of a functioning game, why not show it in motion? To see the game running would be a revelation. There have been multiple people who claim to hold the POLYBIUS ROMs, and yet there's no sign of them anywhere. However, there is...
If somebody tells you that they have a certain ROM and they don't post whether a video, okay, so the more extreme one is if they post the actual game. That within itself would be concrete fucking proof that it at least exists. The secret to Instagram comedy is giant ass there. Okay, I guess. But then there's the part where people are just like, oh, I got it, but then why don't you play it? Why are you adding screenshots? Because obviously screenshots you could just make, you know? You can make these things. And this is what ruins the mystery of it. Why say that you have it and then immediately just say that you can't play the fucking game or you can't record anything about it? Like, you have the game. We have recording software to do so. Why not record the game? What is stopping you from? And they'll give you some bullshit excuse.
There's no shortage of gameplay footage out there. But these are all fan-made interpretations. Impressions of what Polybius may have been like. One of the first emerged around April 2004. Distributed by a site called GoodDealGames.com, the original source unknown. With a spooky icon, it's clearly supposed to evoke the myth. And those who are brave enough to run it are given a warning. The Polybius video game has been linked to impaired memory and psychological changes. Gameplay may cause epileptic seizures in susceptible individuals. Do you still want to continue? Click OK, and you'll be met with the familiar title screen.
No, that does fuck with the sensors.
With the logo rapidly flashing while a sound effect plays.
That's purpose.
A sequence of rising tones.
Oh my god, that is purposeful.
The flashing continues until you press a key. And then, nothing. The game exits with a fatal error, and a message box that reads, April Fools, send this urban legend to a friend. Interestingly enough, if you take the executable into a hex editor, you'll find the 2 MB file is not quite what it seems.
What?
The first 10 kilobytes consist of some data, but the rest? Empty space, acres of zeros, terminated with a few bytes of text. April Fools.
That's actually really fucking funny.
So we can write that one off as an obvious joke. But there is another game that has become the dominant example when searching for Polybius gameplay. It came from a site at Zinislotion.com, the supposed developers of the original. But the site explains that it's just a fan-made attempt to recreate what might have been. Launch the executable and your...
My deal is that if the game itself is told to be mythical in some sort of way, like it doesn't exist, I think the best bet in that case is that it's whether not real or it's just lost to time, right? So any attempt at bringing the game back in any kind of way will always be a fan thing, right? It would be a fan creation. So that would just lead us to just think that the game just doesn't exist, because no one can replicate those certain things unless they try to, I don't know, look up what causes these certain effects. And even then, the effects that they're talking about are extreme. They cause death.
Presented with the obligatory warning screens. Do not play this game, etc. And ominous mentions of cognitive interfaces and higher functions. A familiar logo appears, but this is no mere prank. There's an actual game amidst all the spooky theatrics. The gameplay is admittedly simple, giving you control of a ship that can move in, out, or rotate the playfield. Like the original legend insists, there's more to the game than simple shooting. Glowing shapes bearing numbers appear. And if these numbers match either digit appearing on the base, or are evenly divisible, then you'll reduce the base's number by that amount.
There's flashing
Once the base
things
zero,
that are going on in the
advance
background.
To the next level, where the visuals get progressively trippier.
No way that the fucking game is going to be able to replicate that.
Aside from the
there
puzzle
is
element,
no way the game would
gameplay
replicate
resembles
that.
vector games like Tempest or Star Castle. Although some aspects are inconsistent with vector graphics, such as the swirling backgrounds. Entering the code 35, 34, 31, 54, 12, 24, 45, 43, the code that corresponds to Polybius on a Polybius square, grants access to the higher game functions.
Oh, okay.
There's a host of extra settings here, some relating to auditory entrainment, subliminals, and color strobe, which disable some elements of the game. Others are more fanciful, however. REM imprinting, gameplay amnesia, operant paradigm triggers.
Gameplay amnesia,
countless settings
bro.
designed to inspire the right level of paranoia. Cracking open the executable's resources reveals the game.
I fully believe that, like 100%, these things can be replicated to a dangerous degree, but only like seizures and migraines. Because I was looking at the game and it was kind of hard to stare at. I'm not gonna lie. I looked away for a minute. But man, dude, what the fuck? You have to be some kind of crazy human being to be able to want to replicate a game that absolutely destroys your fucking two senses.
Was made in Dark Basic, a game creation tool. Using a more specialized tool called Dark Explorer, we can reveal all of the game's assets, graphics, sound effects, etc. All of these subliminal aspects are laid bare. A variety of messages written in dark grey flash briefly during gameplay.
Stay asleep.
Obey, consume, submit. It's like something straight out of They Live. The sound effects are similar. Most are synthetic tones, but some feature voice recordings and sounds of breathing. Presumably, these are played at a barely audible level.
Why don't you play? Try the game. Try the game. Try the game.
That's spooky as shit. I would not want that.
Altogether, a pretty neat package for those who want to build their own POLYBIUS cabinet. But who's behind it? The credits hidden in the Higher Functions menu give us some insight. Igor Uspeni's PhD, and a mysterious number sequence. 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42. The numbers should be familiar if you've ever watched Lost. And it turns out the name is equally cryptic. It's an anagram of Rogue Synapse.
What the fuck?
The Whois data for ZinnisLotion.com lists an email from the domain Gorkaweb.com, which in turn links to RogueSynapse.com.
Okay, what is it
It's
then?
the site of an arcade enthusiast with a particular passion for recreating fictional arcade games, such as Space Paranoids seen in Tron, or the eponymous cabinet from The Last Starfighter.
That's cool.
It's a fantastic...
So basically, it's a guy who basically makes games from cabinets that don't actually exist in real life. So like whenever you see a video game or a movie or a show, and in the background you just see a bunch of games in the background and none of them are technically like in any kind of way. And they'll show like a little bit of gameplay of it. That's cool. And he just makes them into real games. That's pretty lit.
Fan-made project. But as far as the POLYBIUS myth is concerned, it's just a tribute. With the explosion of indie developers over the last decade, there have been quite a few other interpretations made, both for desktop and mobile. There was even a version made for the Atari 2600, with very limited distribution at the Retro Gaming Expo 2013. Few of these later examples make any claims of authenticity, and they generally follow a simple shoot-'em-up formula. One particularly recent game that bears the POLYBIUS name is Jeff Minter's version for PSVR. Minter is a veteran game dev long noted for his unusual games and light synths. Since 1981, he's been responsible for a steady stream of psychedelic experiences.
Look at that.
POLYBIUS stays true to the Minter
watch
mold,
that shit.
and with the rapidly strobing colours and breakneck pace of gameplay, you can see why the game has pretty strong warnings before you start.
Yep, I could see
Its
that.
pulsating visuals and trance soundtrack mesh together to keep you in the zone. But its intentions are benevolent, with subliminal messages reminding players of the virtues of a nice cup of tea.
Avoid your fears.
It's good, but it's POLYBIUS in name only. An homage to a legend.
Yeah, because this is 3D and 3D didn't exist back then.
I certainly think there's some truth to POLYBIUS. Lots of random arcades have been used as test beds for legendary unreleased arcade games, such as Marble Madness 2 and Primal Rage 2. And several other unreleased games have also been spotted in the background of old news reports. So POLYBIUS could have easily been one of those.
To a degree, I can agree with that. It's kind of like making your own, using a cabinet to advertise a different game that plays differently from the game, but advertising it as the game that's currently onto it. So like, Primal Rage with Primal Rage 2. I can understand that, but at the same time, it's just like, it just, there's so many things that are that are there to tell you it just doesn't, and it just can't. Like, the technology around it just doesn't work for it. The details that they tell you slowly kind of inch towards that it just can't exist in general. Like, even by law, it just, like, let's say, okay, so CIA is notoriously breaks the law. We know this already. But, like, they are obviously gonna throw somebody under the bus, and it would probably be the arcade holders of said cabinets, right? So my thought is, if it was a thing and it did become bigger during that time where people would die randomly off of things that they got from, you know, side effects that they gotten from playing the game, at some point it would point towards them. It would point towards them. And I don't see any record. I haven't seen anybody bring up record of whatever happened to the arcades that had those cabinets. There had to have been a record of that kind of shit.
What I don't buy is the whole governmental conspiracy behind it. I mean, why would the FBI want to test a machine that makes people nauseous, not only in public, but also on children? I mean, what possible benefit could they have from giving kids migraines? If they really wanted to make kids feel sick, all they needed to do was wait 10 years for Nintendo to invent the Virtual Boy.
Hilarious.
So despite all the promises and these fan-made interpretations, nothing resembling a Polybius ROM has ever surfaced.
I mean,
A few
have you
fan-made
heard of
versions and some
Project
screenshots
MK
of
Ultra?
dubious origin are all
Okay.
that exist in
So the thing with Project MK Ultra, it was not about games. It was about, I think it was acid that they were using, acid and MDMA. They were using a bevy of drugs, and a lot of it was that under their own control. They were actually watching people as they, like, you know, there was never really a thing going out there that, because, like, there's a couple people who were victims to this kind of thing. I think one of them being the Ted Kaczynski. He was one of the victims of Project MK Ultra. But they never, I don't think Project MK Ultra was about using games to that degree. Let me search it up. Project.
No, that wasn't games.
Project Agriculture, illegal human experiments. Oh no, I know that like, yeah, it was definitely not about games. It was definitely just about the drugs themselves that they were using to do certain things. But it within itself saying that, like, yeah, these are.
But what if they did do an MK Ultra-like experiment that WAS about games?
Then it would be kept. So
Remember
let's say they
that
did
if
do
you
this.
have to ask, would the government really do that? The answer is yes, they would.
The answer is yes, they would. But not with something that would be so easily to hunt down, right? Like Polybius, if Polybius did exist and it was something that the government was doing, like the CIA, then people just knowing about it would cause a very bad effort to come into, like, it just feels like too out there to just be like, oh yeah, this is definitely something the government did or something. It doesn't feel experimental enough. It's kind of like Project Midnight, was it Midnight Ride? I forgot, the one where they basically they got a bunch of hookers to drug up a bunch of Johns. That one was kept under wraps for a while, and the only people who ended up talking about it were the people who were most likely affected by the thing, which makes sense. Like, yeah, it was people who were affected by it. But for something like this, I don't know. It just feels, it's too many eyes on it. There's way too many eyes on it for something like this to just be like, oh yeah, dubious thing. Also, a lot of the times the CIA would fuck with things, it'd always be drugs. It always have to be drugs.
in the digital domain. But arcade machines are physical things. So what about any physical evidence? Of course, the original story tells of the machine's sudden disappearance. But what if one unit was forgotten? What if they weren't destroyed, but sequestered in some warehouse? What if someone found one? Well, there are some who claim they have. The videos all follow a familiar pattern. A shaky camera led by rumours of Arcade Hall, to the reveal, a dark cabinet bearing a familiar name.
That's not real. I don't believe it.
Some
I don't believe
even
it.
feature gameplay. Normally it's just the Rogue Synapse version, but sometimes it's something original. And then, just as things are getting interesting, what was that? Jump scare. Roll credits.
I fucking do it. See, that's what I'm saying.
Invariably,
Like,
it's arcade enthusiasts showing off their custom.
No one's gonna take it fucking seriously. No one takes it seriously. Whatever, there's some kind of fucking like interesting thing about like the game that never really existed. There's always somebody out there being like, "Oh, I found it," and then spooky thing comes out or some stupid shit. People do not take this shit seriously. People don't. And if they did, dude, I swear to God, we'd probably figure out that it was not real from the start. It's just a story that people think is just interesting. I found it interesting. It's a fucking arcade cabinet that just doesn't exist. There's a lot of mysteries out there that just make sense for some reason, and this one just, for me, it just doesn't. I don't know. It's an interesting concept at hand, but it's just not enough to me to be like, oh, this is definitely something that's real. I don't think it is. It doesn't feel that way.
Cabinet work, and having a bit of fun in the process. And who can blame them? Polybius is an essential part of arcade myth, and to have your own machine is quite the talking point. Only one Polybius cabinet is unaccounted for. A low-resolution black and white photo that appears on the killer list of video games entry for Polybius. It's a Namco-style cabinet dating from about 1979 to 1981. You can see the same style in Galaxian, Galaga, or Pac-Man examples.
That's interesting.
The black panels and T-molding most strongly suggest a Galaga cabinet with the decals removed. But the sides appear to be lighter, perhaps white, which means it could be the rarer Bosconian or a converted Bosconian cabinet. The controls don't match, however, just a single button and stick. And the coin box isn't consistent with Namco machines of that era.
That's a crazy control.
It is period correct, definitely from the early 80s, but the dual steel plate style is more likely to be from a Data East or Nichibutsu machine. So it could be a custom build, repainted and assembled from spares, or even built from scratch. There's also the very real possibility that it's simply a Photoshop. The Polybius marquee could have been applied directly from the screenshot.
That's fucking hilarious. They just
The
fucking
low
grabbed the
resolution
random.
and lack of color make
The
detecting.
idea that somebody grabbed it. You know, for the more I look at it, the more it does that. But I think that's more of just me fucking with my own head with that. But it's just funny to think that somebody just grabbed the photo of this, put the fucking Polybius title on it for an empty cabinet or something, and just like, here, this is Polybius. Which is funny too, because they never really talk about how the sides are decorated. Because every single arcade cabinet that I've seen always has the sides decorated in any kind of way. So this is literally just a black machine with fucking white sides. Nothing else but the letters Polybius. And are we even sure that these colors are blue and light blue or whatever teal colors they use? Maybe that's not even the real colors there. For all we know, it's probably like, I don't know, gray.
A fake
Red,
difficult,
maybe.
and I suspect it's deliberate. An original photo of a custom cabinet, perhaps, but it seems altered to fit the myth. It's not just cabinets. Sometimes someone will claim to have a circuit board from the fabled game, such as the one featured here. If it were real, it might even be playable with the right connections, or the ROMs could be dumped and subsequently emulated.
But they won't do that.
It would be a very valuable find
because they're fake.
if it were real. This is definitely an arcade PCB, but it's not Polybius. It's a bootleg Miss Pac-Man with some minor photoshopping to obfuscate its origin. It's not even enough to fool Google's reverse image search, so we can confidently ignore this particular claim. Manufacturing an arcade game is something which involves a lot of people. Engineers, programmers, artists. It's not a task undertaken solo. So, with multiple people involved, surely by now, someone would have come forward with information.
Are they gonna tell me that they
Well,
did?
as it happens, there have been a few. Although whether they tell convincing stories is another matter. One testimony comes from an anonymous source who claims Polybius was associated with Sega's arcade division. He's known only as PRG-017.
I know I will not be believed.
You
but
will!
still, I believe this must be told.
You're not gonna be believed. I don't believe you. You're lying.
I have information on a video game called POLYBIUS. This game is real. I was a programmer in Sega's arcade division.
They play the myth straight, insisting that their secret project was designed to stimulate specific parts of the human brain, with testers suffering amnesia and loss of arcade game fandom. They then go on to explain that the Sega Genesis CD made use of Polybius code fragments in order to get the two processors syncing up. The account is poorly written and loose on real detail. It leans rather too heavily on the original myth, and the introduction of a link to Sega doesn't seem to make much sense. The technical details are vague, and the timeline doesn't quite match up. The Sega CD wasn't released until 1991, a decade after Polybius.
This is what I'm saying. It's just like they always say something without doing the research of the game to make it more believable, right? They'll tell you, hey, this happened, this was around this time, and this happened. And then immediately be run down because they just didn't do their 2 cents to actually see what was going around at that time. Like, right here already should immediately just tell you, oh yeah, no, this guy's fucking bullshitting. This guy's fucking bullshitting hard.
Given the overly dramatic ending, unverified status, and complete lack of supporting evidence, PRG-017 is a fraud.
Fucking fraud, dude.
Perhaps the most prominent claimant of responsibility is a man named Stephen Roach, who, in a series of posts in early 2006, claimed to be one of the original programmers of Polybius.
I think it's about time I lay this to rest. My name is Stephen Roach. Cinesolution was a company set up by myself and several other amateur programmers in 1978.
He says he's primarily based in the Czech Republic, where he set up a company called Cinesolution with several mainly amateur programmers that worked on component parts for PCBs, with programming as a limited but very profitable sideline. Interesting how a band of several programmers saw programming as a sideline, but anyway, he goes on to detail the beginning of Polybius.
Yeah, how fucking weird.
We were approached around 1980 by a Southern American company that shall remain nameless for legal purposes, to develop an arcade game that centered around a new approach to video game graphics.
So, a Czech company that specialized in PCBs was approached by an unnamed Southern American company to develop an arcade game which would be tested in a limited North American market. Truly a global conspiracy. He goes on to explain how the side effects started happening early in playtesting, and how the resultant cover-up might have inspired the stories of Men in Black. I'll be honest, the writing smacks of impostorship. It's all recounted in run-on sentences dressed in dramatic language that wouldn't be out of place in a poorly written ghost story, and several things just don't add up. He claims to have been born in Rhyl in Wales and moved to Czechoslovakia in 1965 at the age of 15 due to his parents' business interests. An interesting proposition, given the fact that the country was under communist control at the time.
See, it's just so easy to just be like, bro, if you're gonna lie, be good at it. Be fucking good at it. Because it's just the smallest amount of fucking work that you can do is just look up what the time was, how it was during that time before you fucking lie, you fucking liar. Jesus, you, I swear to God, some of these people just fucking do this to get attention and then they do it wrong. It's so dumb. I hate it, man.
He claims the Polybius name was chosen by one of his colleagues who studied Greek mythology. But Polybius is a historical figure, not a mythological one. The majority of his ramblings are just expansions of the original myth, and what little novel detail exists is presented without proof. I reached out to him via his email address, but received no reply.
I fucking knew it. Little fucking
He did
liar.
reply to an
Little
interview
rat
call from
liar.
BitParade Co. UK, however,
I
where he
mean,
answered
that's
some questions
most
about his role in
early
making the
internet
game.
spread horror stuff.
But that's what,
Disappointingly, much of it
like,
is
yeah, that's like, yeah, of course that's how like most internet horror stuff spreads, but like, come on, man. It's not hard to just do a little bit of research before creating some butt fuck stupid little lie that wants to make him give him a little bit of brownie points for his fucking friends. It doesn't take that long to just do the research about what you're trying to lie about before you fucking lie.
copied verbatim from his original post. Perhaps he wanted to keep his story straight, or didn't want to expend too much creative effort in developing the story. He does go into more detail about the gameplay, however, describing the puzzle elements that would later influence Rogue Synapse's interpretation of the game. In Kat Despera's 2012 article, Reinvestigating Polybius, she found a possible link between Stephen Roach and the Czech Republic.
So you're more mad
Someone with that
they
name
lied
was running a
poorly
troubled
rather
teen
than
facility
that
in
they lied
Burma.
at all.
Yeah, technically, yes. I am more mad that they lie like shit than they lied at all. Because at least this isn't one of those lies that's kind of just like ruins the lives of people. This is just kind of just like you being like, oh, there's a monster in the woods. Ooh, if you get there, he'll get you. Ooh, kind of, thing. It's saying tall tales to say tall tales, That's all it was, But when they go into it, they do it so badly. They're such terrible fucking storytellers. They're terrible liars, and it pisses me off. And I know they're not doing it for the love of the game because they're just so bad. It's just so like, if you go through it, I'm sure if you're the type of person to kind of like investigate this kind of stuff, I'm sure you'll find 50 holes in a paragraph immediately to tell you, oh yeah, this guy straight up doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. All because he just wanted to be famous in some kind of way. That's all they do. They see this thing and then they spout bullshit. And the worst part is they do it incorrectly. Oh my god, bro. Like, it just makes it so Polybius as like let's say you get it, right? It's pristine, it's great, it's a great story, but everybody who goes around keeps tarnishing the name of it over and over again, and now you're left with this rusty piece of shit because somebody decided that they want to throw water at a piece of metal. Like, are you dumb? Are you daft? Are you stupid? I hate these people.
However, this Stephen Roach was originally a policeman from Utah, whereas the one associated with Polybius claims to have been born in Wales, so perhaps it's just a coincident name. Everything about Stephen Roach reeked of a hoax. I had one lead left to follow. The original claims were made on a few different sites, but Roach was most active on the Retro Gamer forums, where there are a number of follower posts. The thread goes on for several pages. A few suspiciously new accounts are quite active. It seems someone might have been using sock puppets to fuel discussion.
I
Later,
fucking knew it.
a moderator confirms that several names are posting from the same IP, and Stephen Roach is amongst them. Most of these
See?
accounts were
Rat
created
liars.
specifically for the ruse, but the oldest had been used in good faith.
God damn it.
I checked
Chad.
the post history, an introduction. I had the prankster's full name and an approximate location. A quick Google search turned up social media accounts that matched. I sent him a tweet and waited. I originally said that I received no reply from Stephen Roach via email, and this was true at the time of writing, and up until a few days after I sent this tweet. As if by magic, 2.5 months after sending the original email, he finally gets back to me. I was approaching the end of this project. I didn't have time for his games.
He's a rat.
I had to call his bluff. So I addressed him by his real name. I said, perhaps it's time to retire the Stephen Roach persona. It was a long shot, and it didn't work. He kept up the pretense. Even in the face of the evidence I had, he wasn't going to give it up. Shortly after, I received a reply on Twitter from my suspect. My original inquiry was polite, pretty straightforward, but the response was obtuse, hostile even. I wasn't going to get a confession, but by now I was fairly sure I'd found the guy responsible. Let there be no doubt, Stephen Roach is a red herring, and his story
It's fake.
entirely fabricated.
I knew it.
Most of what we know about Polybius comes second-hand, and this lack of primary evidence makes me suspicious of the whole thing. However, what we do have is primary evidence for real events that are a bit like some of the things that happened in the Polybius legend. And it's quite easy to see how this could have been embellished or misunderstood to create the Polybius story in these second-hand accounts as they're retold. History isn't necessarily what happened, it's what people say happened.
So, there's a lot of evidence wrapped within the Polybius myth, but not much of it is convincing. The same stories
People don't know how
crop
to
up time
lie.
and time again, sometimes with embellishment, sometimes with new theories, but never anything that links the game to its supposed origin in the arcades. Making sense of it all and establishing the truth is a difficult task, and I'm not the first to try. Perhaps the best way to establish Polybius' origin is to start in the present. Rather than chasing unverifiable rumors from nearly 40 years ago, instead, we can trace the evidence that exists today back to its source.
Interesting.
This trail might not lead all the way back to 1981, but wherever it ends might provide insight as to how this story began. As a starting point, we can look to Wikipedia. Its article history is transparent, and the site has been around for a while. On February the 25th, 2005, the Polybius video game page was created. But this isn't the first mention of the game on Wikipedia. Going back to November the 30th, 2004, the main Polybius article, the one about the historian, was amended with a section titled The Arcade Game / Hoax.
Oh, I was young as shit.
Going back further, there was a short-lived edit on the 29th of February the same year that read, Polybius is also the name of a possibly fictitious video game in contemporary folklore. Related to Atari's Tempest, it legendarily led to mental illness in players. This is the earliest mention I could find. But what exactly prompted its Wikipedia inclusion early in 2004? The internet was young and going viral, an as yet unknown concept. But in August, Polybius was featured in Slashdot, which was a pretty big deal back in 2003, and it mentions an inclusion in a recent issue of GamePro. At the time, GamePro was the world's largest independent multi-platform gaming magazine, and claimed to be read by over 3 million gamers a month.
Goddamn, okay.
In issue 180,
Was there 3 million
covered
gamers?
September 2003,
Goddamn.
although published some weeks earlier, there was an article called Secrets and Lies. The article featured 6 gaming myths, with each assigned a verdict: true, false, or inconclusive. Polybius was number 6. The article expressed doubts over the game's veracity, citing a lack of evidence and the relative ease of fabrication, but it ultimately awards an inconclusive. It was this GamePro article that played an important role in propagating the Polybius myth, exposing the game to a widespread audience that might not have had access to the internet.
So this is the
It's not
first
the origin of the
mention of
story,
Polybius?
but a key catalyst that transformed the game from obscure rumor to a widespread legend.
So that was the beginning of it. That was like where tracing the that was like the first time that it was even mentioned as a fucking game was in a magazine from a long time ago. This is like before like the internet's popularity kind of skyrocketed. This was like 2003. What was I even doing in 2003? I know I was like a fucking second grader. No. I was a third grader. What was the internet even out? No, the internet was out during that time, but did I even have a computer during that time? Because I was using the Nintendo 64. No, dude. Yeah, like I had never thought this would have never been a thought in my head.
Yeah, I think GamePro was probably a primary source for gamers to find out about Polybius. I think that writing about it in a national magazine certainly brought it to attention. And then, of course, after it appeared in GamePro, a lot of people then spread the legend and told their friends or asked other people, have you known anything about it? And probably added a lot of their own details along the way, because that's how urban legends work, right?
Polybius's activity pre-GamePro was much more subdued. But even in early 2003, the game was still well known to arcade enthusiasts.
What?
It turned up on Snopes' forums in July, and had mention in a hoax roundup sometime shortly afterwards, asserting that this one is just...
This would mean that Polybius has got to be the longest running myth in gaming, like, ever. I don't think there's any gaming myth out there that has outlasted anything that Polybius is, because even to this day, people will be like, oh yeah, Polybius, every once in a while, talking about, like, is it real, is it not, kind of thing. I think I'd still hear about Polybius during this day and age. I mean, you're watching the video, you'd know, but, like, that's crazy. That means this one is, I may still be, this myth has been going on for a while.
A gag someone invented several years ago, which has now become enshrined on the web. Sometime shortly before February the 15th, 2003, an article on Polybius appeared on GoodDealGames.com. A familiar screenshot appears, and at some point there was also a link on the site to the April Fool's version of the Polybius executable. Most interestingly, at the bottom of the article, there is a small banner with special thanks to a site called coinop.org. Coinop.org is a resource for collectors and enthusiasts of arcade games.
Ooh.
It features a fairly comprehensive database of games, along with a knowledge base
Polybius
populated with repair and maintenance documents. The site is a common factor in many of these early articles. It seems they've had a page on Polybius longer than anybody else. Their description of the game is quite familiar. It seems most later articles have been based on this one. The screenshot appears here too. At the bottom of the page is a creation date, the 3rd of August 1998, our earliest yet. But is it verifiable?
Yeah!
The URI for this page has changed several times over its lifetime, so tracking down the first date of appearance is tricky. But with enough digging and copious use of the Wayback Machine, we can attempt to discern an origin. The current page's history only goes back to February 2014. At this point, URI rewriting rules made things more human-readable. The page prior can be tracked all the way back to 2003. Before this, the site used lengthy GUIDs, with a minor change in 2002.
Well,
this URI is the oldest I could find on the coinop.org domain, which takes us all the way back to June the 21st, 2000. The entire site moved domain around this time. While it originally started on coinop.org, at some point during 1999, it was incorporated into click2.com, first as a subdomain, then later as a subdirectory. It's here where we can track the Polybius page as far back as possible. A capture exists from March the 3rd, 2000. Interestingly, the creation date of 1998 is missing, as is the screenshot. However, there is a last modified date instead, given as the 6th of February 2000, along with a note. New edition, anyone heard of this game? This seems to imply that the 6th of February is the date the page was added. I mean,
Bro, this is probably the first fucking game that's been around for... This is the first game myth that has been around for 26 years.
it says new edition. So why does the page today insist that it was created in 1998? When did the date created field first appear? A capture from April 29th, 2003 lacks the page created date. The next capture has it. This means it was added between these two dates.
Wow.
The date might have been recorded before this, but not displayed. But another possibility is that the date created field was made later on and populated with a default value. I suspect the latter case is true, principally because almost all the other game pages share the same creation date, down to the 4 AM time. It is possible that Polybius was present in the database back then, but there's absolutely no evidence for it.
That's
what we do
crazy.
have is a verified capture from early 2000 with a date of February the 6th and a claim of a new edition. I had nothing earlier in my timeline. This could be our origin point. Day 0, the day the myth started.
This fucking myth is 26 years old.
So how can we
chat?
prove that this was
God
the starting
damn.
point? Or, more accurately, how can we disprove it? We're nowhere close to the supposed release date of 1981. So is it possible to find any earlier evidence? Anything at all? A throwaway mention, a forum post, or magazine article? Now, rumour has it that the myth first emerged on Usenet, circa 1994. It's not as popular today, but Usenet was once the go-to place for news, discussion, and rumour. It's also fairly well preserved. Since 1995, Deja News has archived Usenet. And in 2001, they were acquired by Google. Today, Google Groups is the largest archive of Usenet posts, with the full Deja archive searchable, along with supplementary data that goes all the way back to 1981. Its search is imperfect, but with some patience, we might get some results.
Oh, what the fuck?
A broad search for Polybius pre-2000 turns up some predictable results. It is the name of a Greek historian, after all. It is matters of history that most often come up, with the occasional reference to a Polybius cipher in cryptological talk.
That's hilarious.
There's also a user named Polybius, who was quite active in Alt Mag Playboy between 1997 and 1998.
That's hilarious.
Narrowing the search domain to known groups helps improve results. And one in particular is a nexus for arcade collectors. Rec Games Video Arcade Collecting, RGVAC for short.
Cute boy.
These guys are invested in arcade rarities.
Hello,
Because if
hi,
something's
Deadlock.
rare,
How are you doing?
it's valuable. So Polybius would be right up their alley. One of the first instances of the word was posted in April 2000, just a couple of months after the game first appeared on coinop.org. Posted by a
Thank you for
user
that
named
hydrate.
NYMechanicalBR08,
Like, look how fucking far of a fucking look. See, we're still looking for evidence before 2000, before the new millennia. So this thing was said to have been made in the 80s. It has continued to exist past that, but then continued on in a website from long ago, and still going on to this point. So there might be a chance that somebody brought it up yet again before 2000. That means this game is this myth about a game is 26 years old or older.
Thanks to coinop.org, a reply to a request for information on an obscure German video game, which triggered an association. The OP of this particular thread is a German fellow named Christian Winter, also known as Cyber Yogi, but we'll get to him later.
How?
On the 27th of February 2000, just 3 weeks after it was first posted to coinop.org, a user named Zoob posted a link on Polybius' page on click2.com. No, not the Greek historian. An arcade game, he says. I am skeptical of the claims made on the following page, but they certainly make for interesting reading. I actually spoke to Zoop. I wondered how he had found Polybius. He told me, I simply wandered across it in one of my random walks on the net. It was serendipity, nothing more.
What age though? What fucking year?
Google Groups' search is far from perfect, so it is possible we've missed something. So what about other Usenet archives? A manual grep of the U2 Zoo Net News archive from archive.org, some 5 gigabytes of text when uncompressed, yields just 3 results, all of which refer to the historian.
Yeah.
A discussion of the evidence for the historical Jesus from Net Religion Christian in 1985, and a passing mention in Net Politics the same year. I even tried a page search of the Usenet archive, a site that claims to be broader and more easily searchable than Google's inherited dataset. I found 0 results pre-2000. If there's nothing within the Usenet archives,
it's slowly becoming more and more a thing that the internet made up and not something that just happened during that time. Because it just looks like anything beyond 2000, nothing shows up. But during 2000s and going forward 2000s, it just seems more and more likely that this is just something that the internet came up with. And they're just like, this is kind of what they've run with. So, like, interesting. It's very interesting.
Perhaps another domain entirely will prove fruitful. Perhaps there is a mention of Polybius in print. Google Books describes itself as the world's most comprehensive index of full-text books, and it is freely searchable. Searching for Polybius between the years 1980 and 2000 yields several pages of results, but every single last one of them refers to the historian.
Yep.
Google Newspapers is a similar story. Perhaps a more specific search is needed, within the enthusiast press perhaps. In the 1980s and 90s, video games were better served by magazines than any other media. I searched nearly 200 gigabytes of gaming magazines, over 3,000 issues worth, for any instance of the word Polybius. There were 3 results.
Oh!
One from the September 1998 issue of Acorn User. A review of Ancient Greeks, a multimedia CD-ROM.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Another pair from 2 adjacent issues of Commodore User, January and February 1986. Programming listings for codes and ciphers on your Commodore Micro.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
An implementation of the Polybius square. That's it. The only instances of the word Polybius across 20 years of the gaming press. If the Polybius myth existed prior to the year 2000, it wasn't widespread. To my knowledge, no 20th century evidence exists. It's impossible to say for certain, but with no trace of prior evidence, we can only presume coinup.org is where...
So this specifically is 100% an internet thing. It is a thing made up in the internet, and magazines took up to it, everything else took up to it, and everybody kind of just like saw it for what it is. Because there's no, if there was nobody talking about it before 2000, and all that came up was the fucking history guy, then what other evidence is there for it to be fake?
And the story began. And whoever posted it there might be responsible for everything. One name I've seen frequently implicated in the Polybius myth is a German fellow named Christian Oliver Windler.
You recording?
Also known as Cyber
Yes, I
Yogi,
am.
Teachmaster of Logology, the first Cyber Age religion. The denizens of RG Vac were quick to pin the blame for Polybius on him. He had a bit of a reputation, it seems. It does all seem to fit. He was in the right place at the right time, and his interests align.
Make sure
there's also the German connection with Zines Lotion.
Yes, YouTube. Make sure to
However,
join the Patreon.
I believe Cyber Yogi is innocent.
Stop harassing me with this damn myth. I didn't make Polybius. Otherwise, the man in black would now go after me. I have absolutely nothing to do with it.
True, he did pull an April Fool's Day prank in 2000. He fabricated a supposedly lost East German variant of Phoenix. True, he was interested in obscure arcade games, particularly trance-inducing Zoner games. And true, he is a little eccentric.
Eccentric.
But why would a native German speaker use a mangled word? And if he didn't want to be caught, why use German at all? Why would he conduct two rather ornate pranks in the same year?
That'd be crazy.
And why would he come clean about one, but not the other?
Because he had nothing to do with it.
How did he get an entry for the game on coinopt.org?
There are a lot of projects with esoteric goals by the CIA and
The
TIA,
coinopt.org
but I'm
domain has
pretty
been around
sure
since
Polybius
1993,
wasn't one of
although
them.
the earliest page.
Like, for me to think that Polybius was something esoteric by the government, there'd have to be a lot more to it than just it being called Polybius. Or just it being fucking, like, put into German hands in any case. Everything about Polybius feels like it was supposed to be done on purpose. It's done on purpose. It's not done as in, like, not on purpose in the terms of just like, oh, it was supposed to be purposely found as a scientific thing and yada, yada, yada. No, what I mean on purpose is that everything that brings it together is more of a work of fiction, and it just doesn't, it's a work of fiction, and it just doesn't work anywhere else. Like, it doesn't work anywhere else except for storytelling, right? Like, I can't think of anything about it. The term, the way the name of it, Polybius, being a cipher used for code, the German word meaning to lose your senses or something like that. It just seems too convenient. It just seems way too fucking convenient.
Capture dates back to late 1996, approaching the limit of the Wayback Machine. Back then, the domain was home to the Virtual Coin-Op Museum, run by Stephen W. Reiner. It was a collection of photographs and articles relating to arcade machines. However, in 1998, Stephen offered the coinopt.org domain to the users of the RGVAC news group. He didn't have the time to maintain it, and so sought someone who could make better use of it. He ended up giving the domain to a web developer named Kurt Koller. By August 1998, Kurt had taken ownership of the domain and had relaunched the site as a games database. In April 1999, he moved the site to a subdomain of click2.com. And, interestingly, he mentions the addition of a German language version. In early 2000, we see another flurry of activity.
No
the CoinOp site moves from a subdomain of click2.com to a subdirectory instead.
LOL.
It's around this time that the
You know what? Let me search something up real quick. So I want to search up all the names they made, the CIA, all the projects the CIA has real quick. So CIA projects. So we have Project Azorian, an ambitious secret mission to raise a sunken Soviet submarine from the Pacific Ocean. Project MK Ultra, a controversial human experimentation program designed to develop interrogation behavior modification techniques, often using drugs like LSD without consent. Project Bluebird Artichoke, predecessors to MK Ultra, focusing on chemicals and biological experiments.
My specialties is in projects like Project Greek Island.
My specialty is projects. Then we have Project Cold War operation to rescue intelligence from the deserted Soviet station. Operation Cyclone, the CIA operation armed and finances Mujahideen in Afghanistan during the 1980s. The Project Stargate project is a long-running investigative psychic phenomena. Project Corona, a satellite photography program. Oxcart A12 Oxcart development high-speed ultrasonic planes. We have Project Mockingbird, which involves wiretapping journalists to identify government leaks. Condor. So like all these names don't come up with anything that's near Polybius range. So even the names don't feel correct. Even in name, everything seems American as fuck. To name something Greek or to name something, I don't know, fucking German seems off.
First evidence of Polybius emerges. By August 2000, the coin-op site moved back to its own domain, where it's lived ever since. So, who provided the information for the site? The bulk of the game's database is sourced from community-maintained lists of games, some of which are still present in coinop.org's knowledge base, and data contributed from other sites and projects. The MAME arcade emulator, for instance.
Oh, I remember MAME. I've used it.
Coinop.org has always had an open call for contributions, but the presented entries for games are manually curated and incorporated into the database, presumably by Kurt. He had exact control over what appeared on the site, and he's always had that control. So perhaps he received a tip about Polybius. Perhaps someone emailed him the description and he reproduced it in good faith. Maybe, but if his intent was to maintain an accurate list of games, why would he keep the text unaltered if most of his arcade collecting peers were quickly prepared to write it off as a hoax? Why would he update the entry in 2009, promising more information? Stay tuned. Information which has yet to transpire. Finally, remember the GamePro article? The one that exposed Polybius to a mainstream gaming audience and is perhaps the single largest factor in the legend's persistence today? I spoke to the author of that article, Dan Amrich, and asked him where he first found out about Polybius.
Oh, good.
Kurt was the person who first tipped me off about Polybius. I've thought about it for a long time, and ultimately I came to the conclusion some years ago that Kurt was probably just making all of this up and pulling the wool over my eyes, and he sent it in as a tip to see if I would bite, and obviously I bit.
That's interesting.
Everything pointed towards Kurt. He was behind coinop.org, and thus responsible for the earliest confirmed emergence of the myth. As an arcade enthusiast, he would have been familiar with the games from Polybius' era. In fact, he owned some of them. As a web developer, he would have had the necessary skills to forge a convincing looking screenshot.
Gone fucking awry, dude.
He also had at least some familiarity with the German language, but he wasn't fluent, hence Sinneslotion. He's no stranger to internet fame either. He's the one behind the Taco Bell $2 bill refusal story under the Usenet pseudonym Captain Sarcastic. Finally, he had a motive. He wanted to drive traffic to coinop.org. And when he sent a tip-off to GamePro magazine, it paid off and immortalized the legend. In any case, to uncover the truth, I was going to have to speak to him. So I emailed him, asked if he'd answer a few questions. He said, sure. I asked him directly, were you responsible for the game's addition to the site? If not, who was the source? Where did the screenshot come from? His answers weren't helpful.
Why?
He insisted the game was present on the site since day one, the 3rd of August 1998, despite the contradicting evidence. He went on, the entry's wording on coinop.org is very specific. That's all I'm allowed to comment on. I didn't expect a confession, but it was clear he wasn't going to let me ruin his fun without some resistance.
That's so dumb.
By this point, I was almost certain he was behind the Polybius myth. He was, at the very least, complicit. So he was definitely hiding something. But what did he mean by very specific wording?
Oh,
My mind was
look at that,
cast
a
back
puzzle.
to the connection between Polybius and cryptology. The Polybius square. Could the very specific wording of the Polybius entry be hiding something? A coded message? At this point, I'm not even sure. It could just be me reading between the lines. A wild goose chase. but I suppose it's worth a try. Rereading the text, I noticed some unusual things. The writing is odd, with rather too many commas, and some peculiar wording choices. There's also a spelling mistake, disappeared with a missing E, which is not necessarily unusual, but it has gone untouched for 17 years. Maybe we never noticed it, but he did notice a spelling mistake on the Polybius Wikipedia article. There's an edit by a Kurt S. Koller made on the 27th of October 2005, where he corrects the spelling of non-existent. So maybe the spelling is intentional. But what does that mean? Perhaps word length is a factor. Perhaps his code needed a 10-letter word and nothing else would fit. Despite my suspicions, my attempts to decipher a message that may or may not exist were fruitless.
Oh no.
Besides, code breaking was outside the scope of my intention. We already...
So like, yeah, exactly. It's kind of just like, it all started out in the internet. It was kind of like, it seemed like it was a joke. And it kind of went through with it and it kind of gained traction. But like, for people to just be like, oh, it's a fucking government thing. It's a CIA. I don't think the CIA would have any part of it. If the game is real though, that would be pretty interesting, but there's just no gameplay. Everybody, like, the original person adding to it is great. It's just everybody else who started trying to add to it just fucking made it so much dumber. Like fucking whatever his name is, Steve Roach or something like that. Yeah, he's what he is. He's a fucking roach. Fucking just trying to fucking steal the fucking challenge, trying to steal it from other people. Fucking Dookie. Dookie, man. He is Dookie.
He had an origin, and we had a likely suspect. Maybe I was hoping for something more. During my search for Polybius' origin, I had seen numerous claims that the myth first emerged on Usenet in 1994, but I never saw any direct evidence for this. However, there is one thing which definitely emerged on Usenet in 1994. A puzzle that has a startlingly similar name.
Wait, Publius effect!
It's called the Publius Enigma.
The Publius Enigma.
Anonymous claims of a hidden meaning within Pink Floyd's The Division Bell album.
Publius.
On alt music Publius. Pink Floyd, an anonymous source emerged with cryptic clues. Few believed it at first, but when the words Enigma Publius appeared in lights at a Pink Floyd concert, well, clearly there was something to it.
Oh shit, I didn't know there were actual lights spelling.
However, to this day,
That's
the Publius Enigma remains unsolved.
Publius.
No hidden message was ever found. The parallels could be a coincidence, but I know Kurt was active on Usenet at the time, so it's fairly likely he was familiar with this story. Perhaps this might be part of the inspiration behind the Polybius myth. There was no shortage of ideas for the avid prankster in the late 90s. Government conspiracies were en vogue due to the popularity of the X-Files. Couple this paranoia with the emergence of an exciting new digital frontier. The internet was a fertile ground for ideas to spread, a critical mass of gullibility. One hoax that gained traction around this time was the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. Proof that people will even believe stories of arbor-bound cephalopods if you tell it earnestly enough.
That's so fucking funny, dude.
This emerged at around the same time Kurt was working on Pornhub.org, and again, maybe part of the inspiration for Polybius, particularly the link to Portland. For as long as there have been internet hoaxes, there have been those who attempt to debunk them. Snopes being perhaps the most famous example. The site was born out of the alt folklore urban newsgroup, and while you won't find any trace of the Polybius
I feel sorry for the octopuses.
There is some discussion given to video.
I really do feel sorry for the octopuses that were taken out of the water just to take pictures through this like stupid little myth that they were trying to do. It seems kind of fucked. I'm not even gonna lie. It seems really fucked up to do. Interesting enough though. I'm surprised that people actually fell for it. I don't know how anybody would think that an octopus would be able to be on land for so long.
Game-related urban legends. Some of them are quite familiar.
How rude.
We can even see hints of proto-myths, which might have helped form Polybius. One legend states that if you're able to attain a particularly impressive high score, government agents, FBI, CIA or similar, would seek you out. Why? Who knows? Recruitment, perhaps. This is strikingly similar to the plot of The Last Starfighter, in which a teenage boy is contacted by aliens in desperate need of a savior with his shoot-'em-up skills. Maybe the myth inspired the film, or vice versa. It probably doesn't matter. The link between the FBI and arcades is further strengthened by the Winners Don't Use Drugs campaign that appeared in all North American arcade games between 1989 and 2000.
The winners don't use drugs thing. It feels like a little that's like the easiest thing to say. It's like, oh, they're influence. The FBI's influence in video games, and to bring that one up, I don't know. That's like saying that you need to breathe air to be alive. It's no.
Quite how effective the anti-drug message was is not for me to say, but the FBI seal is imprinted on the memory of every arcade goer from that time. There's also the very real possibility that the myths were inspired by real FBI involvement in the arcades. Between bootleg machines, drugs, and illegal gambling, it's entirely plausible that the Men in Black did raid the occasional arcade, or seize the odd arcade machine. However, it's far less likely that there was a coordinated plan to control the minds of gamers in arcades, although the CIA did conduct mind control experiments with its MKUltra program. It was really more of a test of the utility of psychoactive drugs in combat and interrogation. Long fodder for conspiracy nuts, but it's like—
Look, there it is. It's the whole thing about MKUltra. Oh my god, interrogations with LSD? Damn. While I do believe that the CIA would be the type of people to implement games if they can use them to take control of the minds of people, I 100% believe that. This ain't it.
of success is well documented. The government has dabbled in using video games as training aids. Atari's Battlezone, for instance, and even Doom. But a full-on mind control conspiracy? That's a pretty far-out theory.
I think that the idea of the government having its act together to the point where they could put in an arcade game in a town and use it to neurolinguistically program or otherwise brainwash the populace is a pretty scary one, just due to the fact that when I was a kid, literally every politician that I could think of was terribly frightened by video games. So the thought that the government would understand technology and be able to use that against the rest of us, I think is inherently creepy, inherently cool.
Yeah.
Another film with shades of Polybius is The Bishop of Battle from 1983 film Nightmares. A reflection of the feared potential harm of arcades, as a hyper-addictive game gradually takes control of a boy's life as he attempts to beat the mysterious 13th level. The rapid rise in the popularity of arcades, particularly with children, caused a bit of a moral panic in the early 80s. Most concerned—
What is this? Excuse the fuck out of me. Playing video games is a man with a mallet with nails and it just comes to beat the shit out of you. Like, what? I will never let my daughter go into one of those arcades. They're full of drugs, booze, and all kinds of things. Who thought that? Who thought that? There is no way there are people who actually believe that. Kids, bikes, and skateboards are a hazard on the street and in front of arcades. There is a win-at-all-cost competition going on among video games and players that makes for an unhealthy atmosphere.
Were relatively unfounded. The kids were there to play video games, not for drugs or gambling.
Are parents just stupid all around? Is it once you just have a child, you just become fucking stupid? Like, is that normal? Arcades are places to go where kids really go smoke and drink. Bro. Okay, it's whether that the parents of that time are stupid, or you just get a child and you just become infantile. You just become infantile, and you're just dumb throughout the entire thing.
But even
Holy
so,
shit, what is this?
the pursuit of high scores through marathon play sessions could prove deleterious. In 1981, Brian Mauro of Beaverton, Portland, suffered stomach discomfort after 28 hours of shooting for an asteroids record. It wasn't the video game that caused it, but a heady mix of sleep
many
deprivation
parents thought
with a cocktail
Pokemon
of caffeine
cards would
and sugar.
turn children into Satan worshippers.
Bro, the Satan scare of Pokemon was one hell of a reason why you thought. I don't know, dude. I don't know what they were on. I don't know why. They just saw a bunch of cute little animals and they were just like, Satan, 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 Satan. I'm just like, are you okay? Do you need Jesus yourself? Because how the hell are you going to look at these things and just be like, the devil and shit? Oh my God, bro. Dude, parents are so dumb. Parents are so dumb. Parents are the dumbest people I've ever seen. I don't know. I think it's Gen X parents. Generation X parents are so fucking dumb, dude.
Headache and
I'm
upset
sorry,
stomach
Bob.
aside,
I'm sorry.
it's difficult to find evidence of any serious injury that has come from video games. However, there was an arcade-related death reported in 1982. Peter Bukowski of South Holland, Illinois, was playing Berserk when he collapsed. It was a pre-existing heart condition, possibly aggravated by stress. But for some, it was evidence that an arcade game could directly cause harm. One very real risk that video games can pose is photosensitive epilepsy. To those who are sensitive, flashing images or patterns can trigger a seizure. In the earliest days of the arcades, this wasn't commonly understood.
My eyes!
And so some flashing effects could be pretty intense.
Science and neural
Couple that with a
between
darkened
brain
room,
cells
long play
and
sessions.
computers.
Despite not being particularly common,
Dude,
eventually someone's going to have a seizure.
The idea that you're going to be able to connect your brain into the computer is crazy, man. Like, that is going to become a possibility, which is interesting at first. But then it's also scary, too, because all the technology that I'm used to is going to become obsolete, and I don't like that. Like, I want to be able to use my computer forever. I like the idea of playing games on this fucking giant box right next to my keyboard where I could tappy shit. I don't know. If I find out that the neural network is going to be the real place where gaming is going to be done,
training
I think I would hate
properly.
that. I would hate that so much. I don't know. I don't like the idea of using my brain to connect to the computer. I want my brain to be separate from the computer. That definitely is going to align into some really bad shit if anybody tries that.
The first reported case of a video game triggering such a seizure was in 1981. Astro Fighter was one game implicated around this time. Today, you can see the lasting effects of these concerns. Flashing effects are rare, and in every manual for every game, you'll find the same boilerplate disclaimer.
Oh, sure. Back in the 90s, an episode of Pokemon appeared on Japanese television that caused seizures and sent 700 kids to the hospital. And that was just at 30 frames per second. Imagine what you could do with a game at 50 or 60. I bet there were some Atari games that gave susceptible kids a not-so-happy Christmas. I watched that banned footage. It made me feel weird.
The motif of harmful sensation is a recurring theme in fiction, particularly in horror. The idea that something can hurt you just by observing it. From Medusa to the Basilisk, the Ring, Polybius. A long line of legends. Sometimes they're even self-propagating, like chain letters or "you have been spooked" memes. It's a huge cliche, but somehow the notion that you shouldn't look compels us all the more. Culture is full of repeating patterns, and as Polybius took inspiration, it too has influenced others. It makes frequent cameos, seen in the background of The Simpsons, The Goldbergs, Batman Inc. The Llamasoft version is a central focus in the Less Than video by Nine Inch Nails.
Should I make reference to Polybius in my content?
We love to tell stories that send shivers
I'll
down
just have it in the
spines.
background as he's walking by
And
an arcade.
with usual cynicism suspended,
and have Men in Black.
the internet has brought a new dimension to horror. Creepypasta is the latest face in a long line of folklore. And quite a few
LOL,
focus
I'd
on
love
video
to
games.
see that.
Stat in
I
the
mean,
background.
even Polybius itself
Maybe.
fits the
Maybe.
description. There's a whole parade of fictional games with a dark secret. The tale of a haunted Zelda cartridge told in Ben Drowned. A forbidden game from the dark web in Sad Satan. And the supposedly lost PlayStation title Petscop.
See these
It's
stories,
a form of horror.
These stories are great. I love Petscop. I love the idea of like games like this, but the way that it's done in like certain cases, like I don't know, for instance, Polybius, it just gets ruined when cockroaches come in and lie about it being real or something. Polybius feels more like it should have been an ARG, just like Petscop, than an actual like myth to come to. Because that'd be an interesting thing. Like, it's an interesting concept where it's just like the government kind of came in and they were just like trying to mind control. So they'd use this thing, but it never really succeeded. So it kind of continued on as this myth where people would go on and just like, you know, fucking remember tales of this game that randomly came on that would just basically fucking kill you. And it's interesting. Like, that is an interesting story. But now that because it's forcement to be real, it comes off as just fucking
If you
stupid.
love them,
and
then
it always
you'll
brings
love what I posted in the recommended reactions channel. Pale Luna Smiles Why.
Dude, I'll definitely take a look at that.
With mainstream appeal, hence the popularity of Minecraft's Herobrine, Slenderman, or Five Nights at Freddy's.
It's Slendy.
It seems we have a hardwired attraction to mystery, a desire to cast light on our fears and on what might lurk in the shadows. Gaming is full of secrets, and in a social setting like an arcade, they can spread like wildfire. Rumors about hidden screens, secret characters, and levels abound. Most were gated behind skill demands, difficult to execute, and so nearly impossible to verify. It was easy to believe such secrets existed, and to a younger observer, witnessing an arcade technician accessing the diagnostic menus must have been mind-blowing.
Oh yeah, that shit's crazy.
Hidden options behind lock and key, cryptic messages on screen, such as the special function seen within the Defender service options. It's no wonder that teen imagination ran riot with possibility. So what does that special function do?
Nothing.
It exits the diagnostic menu and returns to the game. That's it.
That's funny.
Invariably, when you cast a light on things, they turn out to be mundane. But the sounds and the experience of the arcades were a lot to take in. With each play costing a coin, most of us could only scratch the surface. Some games relegated to a fleeting glimpse, lost to memory. The human mind is an unreliable thing when it comes to recollection. And when we hear stories like Polybius, the mind scrambles to make connections. Somewhere, somehow. Maybe this is why some people swear they remember. Perhaps a lost memory triggered, the details hazy. But it must have been, surely. Simutrix Cube Quest from 1983 would have left quite an impression on anyone who saw it.
God damn.
Its hypnotic visuals and Tempest-style gameplay were unlike anything else of the era.
That's 2D in a 3D
However,
space, dude.
it
What
was
the
an
fuck?
expensive cabinet, and probably more expensive per play to recoup costs. And Laserdisc games were notoriously unreliable. It's entirely possible such machines would disappear silently and without trace. Not for conspiracy's sake, but for simple profitability.
That's funny. They were so bad that they got kicked out.
There are
People
plenty
are
of
like,
rarities
"Whoa,
out there that went
where'd it
uncatalogued
go?"
for a long time. Take the East German Polyplay from 1985, for instance. Polyplay has been implicated in
Never
the Polybius
record.
myth. The name is similar, after all, and even the stylized P on the cabinet bears a similarity to Polybius's logo. Previously forgotten, one example appeared at Berlin's Computerspiel Museum around 1998, just prior to the emergence of Polybius. There were 1,000.
So imagine it was real, and this entire time that we were like freaking out about it, it just turned out to be like, I don't know, just like an arcade cabinet that just didn't make enough money. So a bunch of people in well-mannered suits just came in to get rid of it because it just was not worth bringing up, you know? Like, it just sucked.
Or so units
That's the
made.
real reason.
They were found in swimming pools, leisure centres, all over. But when the Berlin Wall fell, the machines were recalled and destroyed. Just a few remain. Perhaps a government cover-up, or maybe just an attempt to recover state-owned assets for profit. Who knows? Not every machine was as successful as Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, or Galaga.
Galaga.
There
It's
are
Galaga.
countless
It's Galaga.
games
Please,
long
no.
forgotten.
No, it's Galaga. No, Galaga. Galaga. For fuck's sake. No, don't say it like that.
Obscurities, bootlegs, and prototypes of no interest to anyone but collectors. Not every game was catalogued.
That's
Not every ROM dumped.
Satan game.
And with the
my
passage
God.
of time and the destruction of cabinets, some may even be lost. It's a worrying void of uncertainty. What if a game called Polybius did exist after all? It could be real. Like Russell's teapot, it's impossible to entirely disprove its existence. But the burden of proof lies with those telling the story. With absolutely no evidence that predates the original story, it's safe to assume that it's just a myth. But from this melange of arcade mystery, a myth like Polybius was almost inevitable.
So, like, what it feels like is that maybe it should have just... Maybe if Polybius is real, and let's say, like, everything is wrong, I think it's the fault of the cockroaches that came in to lie about how it was like a government experiment is the reason why it got morphed into this thing where it's just like, oh, for all we know, all it was a game that just didn't make enough money. It was scrapped because the idea just didn't work. And because the way that things were back in the day, we never really thought about archiving those kind of things. So for us, all it was just a bad game. And that's it. Well, a bad game for their time. And that's all it was. I don't know. But cockroaches. We hate cockroaches.
And so, as the internet came of age, that's how it began. A man inspired saw opportunity and hatched a plan. A sprinkling of detail, touch of paranoid nerve, add a mysterious screenshot, and you're ready to serve. It wasn't enough for collectors well seasoned. Most were quite cynical, and with good reason. As the tale almost stalled, a new trick was needed. A magazine tip-off ensured exposure was seeded. An explosion of interest, and any doubt drowned. Curious waves of the gullible inbound. By now, the story was simply too big to kill. Inscribed in folklore, echoed in forum posts still. An in-joke for arcade fans of spooky illusion.
Triangle Wars.
And for low-effort listicles, an essential inclusion. An indelible myth, but at least we know the deal. Polybius never existed, but the legend is real.
So, yeah, I figured that it wasn't a real fucking game. I figured that. Just crazy that this is what it ended up turning into.
Thank you very much for watching.
Bringing
and until next time,
up about working
farewell.
for the government. So dumb. So dumb. I'm just wondering where those stories came from. Where did those stories come from? Where somebody came in and they're just like, oh yeah, it was a government thing. Ooh, scary. And it just, like, after that, it kind of diluted itself to this horror slop. And it's sad because it's just a game that, if they just kind of kept it, like, low-key and kind of kept the, like, thing to just be like, oh, we don't even know what the game's about. That's the crazy part. And it probably would have just been this interesting thing about, like, a game that just came in, did its thing, didn't make enough money, got destroyed, and we just forgot to archive it. Or we just weren't archiving things back in the day. It's interesting. It's interesting. But that was Polybius, the video game that doesn't exist, by Ahoy. Yet again, an interesting guy. I do love his documentaries. If you want to take a look at them, I would recommend subscribing. Again, it was a really nice video. I really enjoyed watching it. It is.
I remember when I was younger, There was this arcade that had a machine that was popular because it was an unarchived game and had no references online.
Those are a lot more. Those are pretty interesting. And I engage with Horror Slop. Horror Slop is interesting in its own way, but it's more or less just because like how creative people can be with their horror stories behind certain things. In this case, it's just government bad. They did things to your brain. People died. Ooh, I'm government worker. Ooh, I'm Roach. He is Roach. That man is a Roach. Anybody who says that they worked with the government to fucking make a stupid game is a fucking cockroach. He's pulling his cock out. All right, but yeah, thank you very much for coming by. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves. And I'll be back again with another video. I don't know if we're going to be doing more reactions, but we'll figure that out in due time. Maybe I'll keep it at like once a week and then continue on just posting game videos. We'll see what happens. But I am going to continue streaming, and I got to go use the bathroom. But yeah, that's it for the video. Mwah, love you all. Bye, everybody. I'm going to